What's up, everyone? Welcome to episode 7. Is it 7? Is it 8? I've lost count, and I shouldn't be losing count because we haven't done very many, but welcome to the latest episode of Vandals. I'm your host, Esports Doug. With me is co-host Christy Ender Frierson, and we've got special guest Matthew mCe Elmore, head coach of GenG's VALORANT team. Now, gentlemen, I'm going to get to both of you, but I want to start with you. Matt, how are we, baby? How are we feeling?
Doing pretty good today.
Awesome. Ender, talk to me. How you cooking?
Honestly, I woke up 2 hours earlier because I can't do time. So I'm very tired, but I'm ready for this.
It should be a good show. Look, we've got a lot to talk about. We're going to talk background of Matt. We're going to talk everything that's been going on with GenG, which, by the way, congratulations on qualifying for the closed qualifier that starts on Thursday. Super excited to see how you guys perform. Yeah. Well,
also known as tomorrow.
I didn't know it was going to come out on Wednesday, Thursday. You guys know how this goes, but there is plenty to talk about. I'm also really excited. This is the first time we're doing this. There is a community question segment at the end where we reached out to folks on Reddit, Twitter, even in Twitch chat, asking for their questions. So we've got a couple of really good ones. The response was overwhelmingly positive, so I'm really excited to talk through those. But Matt, we like to start people off nice and easy, right? We want to butter you up a little bit, let people get to know you a bit better. So let's start at the beginning. Tell us your background specifically. When and how did you get into gaming at the very beginning?
Well, obviously, I'm old as fuck in the gaming world at this point.
Same, bro.
That I started with we had a Nintendo 64. Was like the first thing I remember, and kind of worked the way up through the consoles or whatnot. But one of my best friends in like high school, we would go over to his house to play a game called Team Fortress Classic, and we would switch off every death that we had. So we would like play that like after school for hours and hours. And then I finally built my own computer like years later or whatnot, and I started talking to the friends that I had met in that game. And I played in a league in that game that was like a sniping league. And then they decided they wanted to play Counter-Strike, and I kind of moved over to there. And then my computer kind of died for, I don't know, like 4 years or something. So when I went to college again, actually, I built a new PC and then started playing again in late 2011. And I started playing Source with those same people. And then I decided, I was like, this is fun. Like, I like the competitive side of things. So I started playing on a team with those guys and just kept going from there, is kind of how everything started.
Wow. So when you say that, like, did you not start playing like seriously until college? Like, I mean, I don't know when you were playing like in high school or before that. Would you have been like pretty high rated or like a high level player, or was it really only until college that you started to really start taking things seriously?
Well, like obviously leagues and stuff like that were around, but I never really played any. Like I didn't really get into super serious competitive leagues until basically CS:GO came out, which 2014, I don't remember exactly when it was. But yeah, I am obviously much older than a lot of my peers so far in terms of like I was a player. That I didn't start playing competitively until I was probably like 21 or 22. So it was much later than a lot of these guys that are like playing leagues right now, that you've got guys that are 14 that can't play in, VCTs and stuff yet. So obviously a bit of a late bloomer, but the scene wasn't really around as big back then. So there wasn't as much incentive and things like that. But yeah, I mean, I started in college after I'd been in school actually and got back into it. So from there, I've just, wasted my life, as some would say, for the last, 9 years or so. So it's kind of crazy thinking back how long it's been.
So Matt, I think we're about the same age, 30, 31.
Yep, 30.
Yeah, I'm 31, so I'm even a little bit ahead of the curve on you here. It is fascinating to hear this because this is definitely not common in a number of ways. Like obviously you and I, like you're much older than your peers, but also you started way later, right? Like you started competing, like you said, at 22, 24 in college, which is also brutal because I don't know about what school you went to. My internet in college was horrible. There was no way for me to compete. It actually like stopped me from competing, when I got to my college age. Was that a hard thing? Did you feel like you were catching up to everyone and competing with all these like
Um,
younger dudes, or what was that like?
not really, because back then I mean, obviously, like I'm not that old in that time frame compared to a lot of people.
Hmm.
And back then, I feel like the scene was kind of all the same age. Like, the scene has always been from 16 to, let's say, 25 for the most part.
Hmm.
So, like, I was in that age range. Most of the people I played with were around my age or younger or whatnot. So, it wasn't really, I never really thought of it, honestly. Like, I always forget sometimes. The first team, like when I played with Soar and we won MDL and made Pro League and got
Hmm.
signed by Dignitas, that team cracks me up because I was 26 or 27 at the time, maybe even older. I would have been 27, 28. And a lot of those guys were like, set. I think Snakes was 16, 15 or 16, something like that. And the oldest one out of all of those guys was 18 at the time, something like that. We were actually the youngest ever team to make Pro League, and I think that still stands, our average age on that. Um,
Wow.
so it was funny because, like, obviously being older, like I had teammates that were born after, like 9/11 and things like that. So
That's
it was
insane,
always
dude.
funny talking to them that it's like, Ryan, do you know what Snakes? It's like, do you know what GI Joe is? And he had no idea. And it's like, all these things I grew up with or whatever, it's so much different than a lot of these things. So it's always funny. And Sean on our current team is, they're all young, but Sean, uh, a lot of the music and stuff he listens to, it cracks me up because I'm like, why, like, how do you know what this is? Like, this came out before you were born, and he's listening to it or whatnot. So
Oh my god, I love it because I've literally been on the opposite side of the conversation where I'm the one that doesn't understand the references. For context, I'm 23 now, and I work in broadcast. So I've worked with a lot of people that have pushed past their 30s. It's very fun, very fun. I do have to ask you though, what did you? I'm curious what you studied in school and if it has any bearing or effect on your life. Are you using that degree in any way now?
I have not really. I worked for a robotics lab for a little bit, and that's probably about the closest I came to doing it. But I'm still actually enrolled in school again now, finishing my degree because I didn't finish the 4 year. I have a 2 year degree and then a bunch of certifications, and I'm going into the computer science with a specialty in like security.
Very cool,
Dope.
very cool. Maybe that'll have some, help when you're trying to learn KO or something like this. I don't know. Just a
Who knows?
thought.
Well, we'll come back to this because that just opens up a whole can. You're a student while a professional coach for an esports organization that's obviously doing very well in the Valorant space. So we're going to come back to that. But tell me about the transition from Counter-Strike to Valorant, and more so, and we can get into this a bit more, but you were a player in CS, you transitioned to a coach in CS, and now you've made the hop to Valorant. Why the jump over to Valorant? Why at this time? Why now? How did that come to be?
What do you want me to start with? I guess it makes more sense to go from player to coach and then
Sure.
whatnot. Basically, as a player, I was never that good,
Mm.
honestly, at a top level. I was more known for my leadership ability and my mind for the game and stuff, rather than individual ability. Because, like I said, I was not that good.
Mhm.
I definitely overachieved for my ability level, and I'm very proud of that. But on Dignitas, we were losing, we weren't doing well, and there needed to be a change. Attitudes weren't good, et cetera, et cetera. And they decided it needed to be me. And so I was kind of out of, the team that I'd brought up for the last, couple years or year or whatever. And I had a chance to go work with Rogue, basically, which was Cadian, Hiko, Vice, Sick, and GMD at the time. And I started with them, did a trial, and quickly got picked up. We qualified for DreamHack Austin and the London Major, and
Mm.
then we ended up replacing GMD with Ricky, the Australian player. And we came to DreamHack Austin. We're picked to place last, not really do anything, and we did a ton of prep work on stuff. Came in, guns a blazing. We almost won the whole thing, barring a super good performance by the space soldiers guys, which was unlucky, but still placing second place at this when we were placed to, pick last, including upsetting a lot of teams, was a really big step for us. And then we continued that success at the, the minor at the time. We ended up getting second. By today's rules, we actually would have won it because there's no like second chance or redemption or whatever. But it was huge, that gave us stickers that put us in the major qualifier, which was like, it was a special feeling, like to cement yourself and be able to do something and help a team like that. And then, from there, Cadian went on to, or I guess, we choked 2 Inferno games against North and Astralis at the time in the major qualifier stage or challenger stage or whatever it's called. So we did make the main event, but we were there very close in my opinion. If we hadn't choked the games, I think we would have made it, obviously. But from there, Cadian ended up signing with North, and we kind of needed an IGL. We had to grab, the first person available. Team started to fall apart a bit, and then, of course, that falls on my shoulders, and said the wrong thing to the wrong people. My attitude wasn't good. I was being, I needed to grow up a little bit on some stuff, and got released from there. So at that point, I kind of went back to playing for a bit with some of the guys on SOAR to help them get a MDL slot, which became Triumph. We picked up Grim and Stakes again, qualified for DreamHack Atlanta. Did really well there, and then I got approached by Chaos, and Chaos, of course, is where a lot of my success came from. And went over there, qualified for Flashpoint, had to make a bunch of roster changes, and then towards the end of the year, obviously Steel went to VALORANT. We ended up winning back-to-back events in IEM Beijing and DreamHack Winter, along with an MDL Championship, Winners League Championship, and Mythic League Championship. So we were very successful as a group. And then at the end of last year, Chaos announced that they were releasing us, and we couldn't find a new home, basically. So Leaf had a really good chance with Cloud9, and we told him, just take it. That's way too good of an offer to turn down. And then we were going to move together as a team, and then Eric Zeppa got the offer to play for the CSGO team because he wasn't ready to switch at that time. So he did that, and at that point our project kind of broke up and we all started going separate ways. I actually was going to focus on school because I didn't really have any offers. And then like this same week I got approached by 3 different organizations that they were like, hey, we're interested in trialing you or whatnot. And I was like, oh, like perfect. So that's why I was enrolled full-time in school and then doing that. And it was rough last semester.
Wow. I mean, it sounds like kind of a roller coaster journey, like going from player to coach, like back to player for a moment, back to coach again. And I'm wondering, you kind of alluded to having, a lot of learnings, especially when you were first transitioning over to the coach role and, making some mistakes, but trying to fix them moving on. I'm curious sort of what that growth sort of was for you. And, I imagine when you're initially transitioning from player to coach, you don't really have a lot of experience there. You're kind of just figuring it out as you go, but now you probably have much more of a defined coaching style. You probably have a bit of a philosophy that you take with you. Can you sort of walk me through what that looks like for you?
Well, as an IGL, I kind of was a coach without like having a coach at the time. So I was used to going over ideas that I had or strats or, trying to fix things from my point of view because I want to do the best that I can do and stuff. So in terms of coaching and whatnot, it's, there's something that I have a very creative mind that I'm like, hey, I think this can work. We should try this. Like we basically wasted a half of a scrim yesterday because I was like, I really want to try this to see like how good it is or if it can be, viable and things like that. And, I've put the guys through the ringer on stuff. I made GMD play Yoru for like a full day because I was like, I swear to God, this is good. Like we can do this. It'll be really good. And it worked, but we weren't we didn't play it well. So we kind of backed off of that, despite everybody like thinking we were trolling. This it's so funny with this game. There's so many different things you can do.
Right.
That like when we were playing our Breeze comp, for instance, we would join the server against teams, and they thought we were trolling. Like half the time we'll join, like when we were trying out Yoru, like instantly the other team's like, "Are you guys griefing? Like what is this?" So like my coaching style and stuff in general is like yeah, like fuck it, let's see if it works, and then
Oh.
we'll go from there. Like try to make it better, and just identifying mistakes and stuff, and looking at rounds critically. Even when you win rounds, it's not because you did the right thing. You can also lose rounds vice versa. And if we're doing the right things in a round to win a round, but like it breaks down in a way that is uncontrollable, you can still point out that was a good round. And I think that's something I've had to learn. And obviously, I'm known as a hothead, and I kind of snap pretty quick. And as I've gotten older, it's I've definitely calmed down on that a bit, but I still get upset. But it is more like just in terms of coaching that it's like you have to have a connection with players. You have to be a human on at times try to keep people joking when I'm not raging at stuff. But it's it's a process. Everything is. And I don't know if I'm doing the best job. I don't know if what I do works, but I've had success doing what I do. So I'm just trying to stick to my beliefs and things, and then hoping for the best from that.
Given some of your recent results, it's kind of hard to argue on whether or not things work. Again, you guys just qualified for closed. Shortly after taking over the helm, you make it into Masters 1. So we'll talk more about that. Let's talk about coaching in Counter-Strike versus coaching in Valorant. What are some of the key differences? How has that transition been for you?
At the beginning of Valorant, it was the most fucking annoying thing I've ever had to deal with. We don't have, we didn't have a coach slot. We didn't have,
Yeah.
like, I'm sitting here watching Twitch streams or Discord streams of one player at a time, and it was just very slow going. That it's like, if something happens in a round, I can't just mouse through the people and watch what's happening throughout a round to like help identify what's going wrong. So like at the beginning, it was very frustrating. Obviously, there's a huge learning curve, but the biggest thing is the excitement was there. It was a new game. I was excited. Like it was like being a kid in a toy store. There were so many new things that I could try, and trying to be creative with how we did things, et cetera, et cetera. So it was a lot of fun getting to learn. Some of the new stuff in Valorant. I mean, even every day I continue to learn on stuff. There's, there's little things that I don't know that, the guys teach me or we find out together, or, something on Reddit pops up and we're like, oh shit, like that's actually pretty sick. So, CS was like more straightforward. I think Valorant is a lot more obscure, as well, because the abilities. I mean, if you think about this game too much like CS, you will not be successful, in my opinion. CS fundamentals help and stuff, but it is not Counter-Strike. If it was, there would be, some teams that were insane. We wouldn't be as good. There's things like that you could play around perfectly in Counter-Strike terms, but you took full map control, and guess what? They just Sova droned and reconned, and everything you did in that round to set yourself up to win, you just got undone.
Yeah.
It's so interesting to sort of hear the perspective on things like that, because obviously like the initial discussion was so much about like CS players being very good at it. So many of the fundamentals transition over, but the mindset does need to be a little bit different. I know you've coached some excellent players in your time, like Vanity, Zeppa, Steel, like definitely make the list. Many others. Yeah, they're not that great, but they're decent. They're decent, right? Maybe not terrible. But seriously, what is it like watching players like that sort of grow and develop over time, transitioning games, and just leveling up as a player?
There's certain people you work with, whether as a player, a coach, or friends or whatever, that will probably be successful. And there are special players when you see those people, and you kind of recognize those as you go, and every now and then you'll get one that you're just like, wow, like this kid is the real deal or whatever. And I've been very lucky to work with a lot of those people throughout my career. And basically you just try to help them. I would like to say I had a positive effect on a lot of people throughout my career. I've had a negative effect on some just the same way though. But your goal in players and things like that is, you always want to try to help them, whether that's building confidence, like whether that's talking to a player after a game that they just had a horrible game. And, it's your responsibility to go talk to that guy and be like, hey, I know you sucked. We all know you sucked. You don't need to like think about it. You're okay. You're here for a reason. We've got 5 capable people that when people have off games or you go through a slump or whatever, that is where everybody else comes in. Like you just keep grinding. Don't like overthink something. We know how good you are as a player. And I had a player on this team on GenG that recently did it, where they were slumping a bit. We played a match. He played one of the worst series of his life. And afterwards, I just kind of had a pep talk with him. And then the next game, of course, that guy shows up big time. And, it's questionable that, people are always like, do coaches do anything or whatever? And I may not, but it is. I like to think that if a guy is having a tough time, I'm personable enough and can talk to them and sound like actually be genuine with them to try to get them back in the right state of mind and to keep my players on the right track to hopefully be successful. And I think that's shown, but man, I've got to work with some talented guys too. So who knows on the other side.
All right, let's transition over to your time with GenG. You take over the helm on February 1st. If I understand that correctly, we talked a bit about how chaos dissolved, kind of what were your options, where are you going to go? You find yourself, fast forward a bit, with GenG. We lightly touched on the fact that it's been pretty successful, right? All things considered, we talked about qualifying for Masters 1. Since Masters 1, you've had 2 losses against Cloud9 Blue and TSM. How have things been with GenG since you have taken over?
I mean, I'm lucky that I had guys that, wanted to improve and get better and stuff. And the attitude always helps. We just we peaked around Masters 3 or 2 or 17 or whatever they want to call it. And we ran into phase after we just had to play a really grueling BO3 against Envy, and we just didn't have enough left in the tank to put up a good fight against those guys. Those guys were peaking at the same time. And, we came back, we had just played a couple hours and they gave us 5 minutes before we had to start the next match. And, this is so spread out that it didn't make sense to us. Like, why couldn't they have just done it on a different day? Because we had been waiting, weeks in between stuff. I felt like the planning could have been better. But no discredit to those guys. I mean, Baby Bay and Corey are just, fucking nuts on that team. Nuts. And Raucus and Zachary are both like really solid. Like, I think that's the people that don't get talked about that need to get talked about because they do their job so incredibly well on that team. And then of course Marv, but Marv is gone, so I won't mention him. But we peaked at the right time. We were doing some new things to help with some of the old stuff. We switched our play style a little bit, a little more dynamic on things, and it turned out for us. And then we came into the Astra meta, which fucked the Astra meta, and we didn't play it at first, and a lot of people didn't realize how strong it was, and we just weren't that good with the character yet. And so we tried to power through, and we had close matches, we had some inconsistencies and whatnot, and we ran into a Cloud9 Blue that had played, I don't know, it was like 17 matches in a row, including winning an NSG tournament that had 0 VODs on them, which is, wild to me. So we have no idea what they're doing. We have we don't know how to prepare. They're a brand new team. They just changed a lot of pieces on it. And, we ran into a great team and they beat us. And then the next time coming through, we were just struggling, man. Our team wasn't in a good spot. And we ran into TSM, and Wardell went 17-1 to start the game, and we tried to climb back into the game. But, we've always historically struggled against TSM. They do well against us. I don't know if it's a mental thing or whatnot. But, they beat us, and we're done. Like, all of a sudden, we have no chance to qualify for Iceland. We were just out. And that was a huge disappointment. And I know everybody on the team was really, unfortunate. Like, I don't know. We were pretty upset about the thing, and changes had to be made, and of course that led into Danny getting benched.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about that, because I think, like, from the outside, obviously seems like a big change. I'm sure it is a big change, bringing in nature to the team. So I'm curious what that transition has been like, and also what do you feel like nature uniquely has to offer for the roster and for the team?
Well, obviously we were trying a bunch of people out that I read an article about us that said we had played with a bunch of people that was news to me. That
It's the
we
best.
had tried out Zeppa and whatever, which like I wouldn't have tried out Zeppa. If I could have got Zeppa, I would have got Zeppa. But we tried out a bunch of people. We didn't know what we wanted at the beginning, but we wanted to go for more of an IGL figure on our team. And so we tried out Def and Brock and Nature, and we really liked Def and Nature. But Nature was literally dropping like 30 to 40 every single. It was incredible. It like one of the craziest week and a half to 2 week performances from a player I've ever seen.
Yeah,
Like
he's nuts,
the
dude.
numbers he was putting up were incredible. And since then he's like cooled off, and like obviously we know that's his peak, that he's capable of doing that. But we brought him in to help, kind of IGL and give us. I wanted an IGL that potentially wasn't a CS IGL, because I think they could think about the game differently. And then the rest of us could bring in the CS knowledge and things like that to help. And just Nature's personality and everything really kind of unlocked the team. Like it didn't really feel like a team in terms of, people joking or playing games with each other or things like that beforehand. People would just sit in TeamSpeak, like watching YouTube. We'd be starting practice in 5 minutes and nobody had said a word until I'd be like, hey, like, are people here? Like, what the hell's going on? Um, but like since then, we joke a lot now. It's just a much better environment in general. And I don't know how. I mean, Nature's just a goofball, that he just everybody's and it always helps when you're winning and doing stuff that people are in better moods or whatnot.
Right.
But since Nick has played with us, it's been a completely different team.
Yeah, I mean, I love IGLs that are goofballs. I'm wearing my Fnatic, my Boaster jersey, right now. And I honestly, I'm really interested, sort of, in the process of looking and seeking out a new IGL, because it seems like that's the type of player that's so much harder to like scout, and so much harder to like know if it fits in with your team. Like, I imagine like it's not the most difficult thing in the world to sign, a new duelist player, a new, player of like other positions, but to bring in an IGL and to know like this is the mind we want to direct to the ship, is that a much longer process for you? Did you have more ideas of what specifically you were looking for? I think the point you made about not wanting someone with a huge CS background was actually really interesting.
I mean, I believe there should be a mix of things, and every time we start doing stuff, it's like we've kind of been having to battle this CS mindset that it's like, oh, well, this should have worked, or we should have done this, or whatever. It's like, that, yeah, in Counter-Strike that would have won, but it doesn't always work that way in Valorant. Like you can set up rounds really well, and like I said, with the recon, or you could go into a site against Astra and there could be one person there and they could shut down your execute, even though you played the rest of the round perfectly. And you have to identify at that time that you're like, did we do the right thing? Like, was that a good round, etc. But bringing somebody in that's just an absolute grinder is huge for us. Like, he plays the game all the time. He thinks about the game in a different way than the rest of us, which is important. That we have the other viewpoint from it. Like, in terms of like trying out people, trying to find an IGL is brutal, like in itself. There's a lot of people that call themselves IGLs that aren't leaders. And what I mean like that is like a dominant personality, that it's like, you need somebody that it's like, when things are getting hard, he's not just going to be like, well, I don't want to call anymore. But like, we still don't have that, but we're making do. But we wanted a Sentinel player and we wanted an IGL, and so our two biggest options were Def and Nature. And it was a really hard decision between the two. Def's fucking phenomenal. He did a great job with us. But I just felt like long-term wise, Nature was the better decision, and we kind of went that route.
And again,
so
it seems to be working out, right? You guys just had a huge win over Ambox to qualify for Closed 1. And the gift that you get off of that is a first round matchup up against Sentinels, the best team in the world. How do you as a coach prepare to play a team like Sentinels?
We actually historically match up really well against Sentinels. The guys like playing Sentinels.
Hmm.
We dating back to matches before I was on the team and when I was with the team, like they really don't blow us out. We typically are in maps or take a map or they've beaten them before. Obviously, we haven't played them with tens, but historically we've done fairly well against GenG. In terms of preparing, it's incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
Like right now, we just went. Everyone's like, "Oh yeah, they have a ton of film," or things like that. It's like that was weeks ago at this point in a different meta
Hmm.
with different gun changes, different agent changes that affected things. So it's like we can look at stuff, but I have no idea what Sentinels plays now. In terms of they've played I think 4 maps, none have been streamed to my knowledge, or I haven't looked that closely yet. But it's like I don't think they've played Split. I don't think they've played certain maps or whatnot. That it's like we have no idea what champions they're playing on those maps. And in terms of preparing, like in Counter Strike, it was a lot more straightforward. That it's like you could see what teams are doing with strats or whatever like that. You could go into a match right now against this team. They play 5 new champions that they've never played before, and it's like everything you prepared for is out the window.
Yeah,
You
it's
have
gone.
no idea what they're going to do at that point.
Yep.
So preparing in this game is definitely very, very difficult. It's more about rough tendencies or like if players sit in certain areas and
Hmm.
stuff like that. But it's incredibly hard because a lot of the games don't get streamed. That what are you supposed to do?
Right.
Honestly, you can only look at so many things in terms of data or whatever that is available. So it's very hard preparing. You basically want to do the best you can in practice for your stuff, and then you go into a match and you hope it works, and then from there it's my job to adjust live to what's happening to
Mhm.
make sure we're doing the right things.
Yeah, I think I think there was one set that was streamed from them versus Sonics. So you've got 3 maps in total. Whoop, yeah, very exciting. 3 maps that you can review there, including an upset on Icebox. That was kind of fun. But I mean, Sonics is a team we've seen before. There were a lot of new faces and upsets coming into the qualifiers. What were some of the standout teams, do you think, that maybe you didn't have your eyes on, weren't on the radar before, but you think are pretty impressive?
Well, it's funny because a lot of these teams that just won, we've played in scrims, and they've either beaten us or whatever, which like scrim results don't in the end ultimately matter. We've never been a good scrim team. Like we always play much better in matches, but you see some of these guys, like we played Noble a lot. We played Pioneers and they dominated us one day. We've played Rise and Rise has done well against us. And so you play these lower tier teams and in your head you're like, oh yeah, they're scrimmers, or they wouldn't perform this well in the match because a lot of them didn't before they were in the team they were in. Or they didn't play near as well. But for whatever reason, these groups of guys together are playing, lights out. They have clear goals and rounds. They do a great job, and like Pioneers, for instance, is implementing Yoru and doing a great job at it. Like it's very hard to prepare or play against those teams when you've never run into it in a game.
Yeah.
That it's like Yoru does so many weird tricks that if you're really not paying attention or knowledgeable about Yoru, it can completely catch you off guard and they can win a map off you. And if they get one map, teams already are upsetting a map in general against a lot of teams in the tier 2 scene that if they get an extra one because of a Yoru pick or something weird that they're doing or a way they're playing the map, they're gonna take series off these teams.
Hmm.
And these guys have been putting in a ton of work. Like these guys play NSGs, they play VCS, they play rank, they grind, and I'm really happy that it's showing the success of those players against the top teams.
Yeah, it is fun to see. Like it I remember when all this kind of went down, the general consensus was this is an exciting time to be a fan of North American Valorant, right? Because it has clearly been shown that tier 1 teams are good. Tier 2 teams can obviously compete, and maybe that dovetails into a conversation around what do we consider in this arbitrary T1, T2, whatever. Regardless, at the end of the day, you've got teams like Rise, you've got teams like Pioneers who are legit, right? Like big wins against teams that nobody would have expected them over, that have gotten to this point. So it's been a ton of fun to watch. I think one of the other things that's been fun to watch is Breeze, right? Like we're finally getting some reps on Breeze after it being out for a while. What are your thoughts on the map? Does it play like you would expect?
It's fucking chaos at all times. That's the best way to describe the map, man.
Is
We
it
played
good chaos
phase-
or bad chaos though?
Both.
Okay.
Like we started playing it when it came out.
Mhm.
FaZe beat us so badly in a scrim that Baby Bay typed to us and he was like, I'm not even gonna op because like you guys are trying to learn the map, so I'm gonna help. And we got decimated to the point where I was like, fuck it, we're banning it. We're not playing like we're not gonna play the map. And we literally didn't. We didn't look at it for a couple weeks at that point, to a month to whatever. And obviously that was like we picked up nature somewhere in there. That it's like we were working on our other maps and solidifying those before we could go back to Breeze. But man,
Sure.
that map is just chaos when people want to play it chaotically.
Yeah.
And it's such an interesting map. Nobody knows what's good on it yet. Nobody knows like, different things that are working. We came in and we're playing Brimstone on the map, and half the teams we joined, they're like, you guys are trolling. Why are you playing Brimstone? And like the first one, because we knew for the comp we wanted to run, but we had no idea on the 5th. And so we were just like, fuck it, Brimstone. I have ideas. And we showed up and like, so a team, gave a shit about it, and GMD dropped like 40 on Brimstone first game.
Wow.
And we're like, okay, like fuck it, we'll try this for a little bit longer. And then we kept playing it and kept doing well in scrims. And like we beat some teams so badly at the beginning on Breeze that they switched comps. That they were playing this, like I think a lot of teams weren't playing Cypher. We played Cypher because of FaZe, because how they were able to control part of the map. And so I was like, yeah, we should do that. And then we started finding like these trips and stuff. And the first time we played Cypher, not on B site, and people were hitting trips and we're just spamming them through the Viper wall. Like I was crying laughing. Like it was just so funny because people have no idea how to play against it. And I'm like, all right, this is the comp we're going with. We've done well with it, and we just continue to get better with it. Against Knights, we had a close game on it and we lost. We lost both pistols, and people are like, oh, these idiots, like, why are they playing Brimstone? Like, these, Like, we lost both pistols. 2 of my guys had the worst performances I've ever seen. Like, I keep joking they didn't have monitors on in that series. But, like, we still barely lost on Breeze. And then we go into the Andbox match, and it's like, they picked Breeze against us. And we were like, we were so scared they were going to play one of the other maps that remains nameless. And we're like, there's no way. Like they picked Breeze. Like this is literally dream come true scenario for us. And apparently they had been doing super well in scrims on Breeze and stuff. But we had their number on the map, and we could play them again, and they could 13-0 us. That's just how the map plays.
Yeah.
But like there's some really good teams on Breeze that you guys haven't even seen play Breeze yet. So there's so many different styles. XSET runs the double Sentinel. And different things like that, and it's fun. It's a fun map. It's fun to innovate daily on the map, to be like, oh yeah, we should try this, we should do this. There's so many options that nobody knows what's good. Nobody knows how to stop stuff. Nobody knows how to counter stuff. Like, so we continue to play the map, and our guys like the map. So
I mean, that's great to hear, because I think like early on in a map's life cycle, right, like getting all the off the wall strategies and trying to experiment, constantly innovate is a really cool thing. And you kind of, I mean, you mentioned it there too, that you're picking up strats from other teams are changing their comps after losing to you. So I'm wondering if there's anything you can share that you learned from another team that that like sort of evolved your understanding of the map to what it is today.
I mean, there's some teams that do really cool aggressive CT stuff. TSM was a team that was doing some things that were like, oh yeah, that's cool. We should steal that. They were doing it every round, probably to practice, or I don't know if that's how they thought they should play it. But we were like, we do it when we want to throw a different look at somebody. 100 Thieves Breeze is actually was fucking disgusting as well. But we don't play a Sage, so we can't do a lot of the stuff some of these cool aggressive teams are doing. Like, these different teams will wall up in the back of mid to see over smokes. They'll, wall up in these areas to get pushed so quick. The double doors wall as Sage is so annoying because you have to break it to get through it, but they can rotate as freely as they want because of the incline. So they can jump on the wall and rotate through double doors, but you can't use double doors. So there's a lot of really cool stuff with Sage, and of course it helps with plants and things like that. But we don't use the Sage. But if we ever do, there's so many sick things we can steal from other teams. But just it doesn't fit with how we play right now, and we've had success without it. So I don't feel like we need to add the champion in. Or agent. I'm a big League fan. Sorry.
Yo, good choice.
Good. Yeah, we were gonna like. Oh, you're good. All right, let's pop over to the community questions. As I mentioned at the beginning, we reached out to the community. They wanted to pick your brain, and there were actually a pretty considerable amount of questions that came through. So we're gonna start off with, this was actually a Twitter question. This was from @_jbob_, who also works with GenG. Who, in your opinion, is the most underrated player in North America? And then, as a follow-up, who's the most difficult team to prep for?
I think the most difficult team to prep for is the guys like, V1 or FaZe, or these guys that they run stuff at you, but they just play post plants to perfection. Like V1, you know what they're gonna do, but if you don't, it's very difficult to stop. Like. If you let them in a site, you know that it's like you're gonna get punished. So it's like, do we just gamble a site and just try to kill them before they plant the bomb? Like, there's stuff like that. And then FaZe, of course, it's like, FaZe just half the time spins a wheel and Baby Bay's like, yep, I'm dashing here. So it's like those teams, they're so chaotic and it's very hard to play against them. And of course, any of the lower tier teams. Because a lot of people talk about like, oh yeah, there's so much film against these tier 2 teams. How could these tier 1 teams be so unprepared? If you go back and look through all the NSGs they've played, most of their games don't get streamed. There's no replay system. So if you don't have a Twitch VOD or something, there's... Sure, they played 50 matches, but if they have one Twitch VOD a month ago, like, you have no idea what they're going to do.
Right, there's nothing there.
So, yeah, I mean, preparing in general in this game it can be very difficult.
Definitely.
And most underrated player, man, I have no idea. I'm going to go with Effie's right now because, we cut him, or I didn't, but they did, and they get shit about it a lot. But he brought that, he helps that team so much that that guy knows more recon darts than anyone. He can shock dart anything from anywhere. He helps them with their post plants and that reason and stuff. And he doesn't get a lot of praise. His individual abilities, solid at times, and he just does what's necessary to win. And I feel like that's a common occurrence for the V1 guys. Nobody thought any of them were good, going into it, but the people that have worked with some of those guys or know Jordan or Anthony or whatever knew they were going to be good. But everybody overlooks those guys constantly. Now they're getting a little more limelight, and their egos are a little bit crazy, but they're also a really good team. So
respect for the underdogs, for people that don't really have much expectations.
Yeah, they're not underdogs anymore.
Not underdogs anymore. Definitely not. Definitely not. Back in the day, maybe. Okay, at Cities Hope asked, have you made it a point for the players to be flexible in terms of their agent pool? I noticed many GenG players play multiple agents.
I'm a bit crazy when it comes to stuff. I'm very lucky that I have guys that will play. Like, I could tell Mikhail he's on Jet tomorrow, and he'll just be like, all right, like, I guess. So, you have those selfless players and things like that are talented individuals that they frag and they play well regardless of the agent they're on. So it definitely opens up a ton of options for us where, if you have a guy that can only play Sky or can only play Phoenix or only play Jet, you're really limited in some of the stuff you can do. And as this game gets more in depth, it's going to be rougher to stay, on top, in my opinion. So definitely I try to get guys to play new stuff a lot. But I'm very lucky with the players that I have, that they're good with stuff like that, and they don't bitch too much when I throw them on suicide champions like Yoru.
Not too much. We're actually going to talk with there's a great question about Yoru that we'll come to later. But before we get there, this was from Hamlet_271. I believe this was Reddit, and then Tico, also from Reddit, asked a really good follow-up question. Where do you find the balance lies between constantly replacing and or refreshing your playbook and sticking to the same old trusted strats that you execute well? And then similarly, we touched on you being a little crazy, self-proclaimed. What are your thoughts? What's your thought process on all the role changes that GenG has undergone?
A lot of it in terms of strat wise and stuff, I've always been a believer of, if I do something well enough, you still have to stop it. It doesn't matter if you know that I'm doing it. Yeah. So if you have stuff that works, like, use it. Don't be scared to use it. If they shut it down, try to figure out why they're shutting it down and adjust it. But we stopped innovating a bit, and I feel like we got a little stale on some stuff, and we started to slump a bit. So that that fell on me, that we're like, oh, we keep adding these new things. We should definitely make sure we're good at the other stuff. Mm-hmm. But I think it's a good balance. Like, if you have something that has an 80% success rate, like, why would you not do it?
Right. That's pretty good.
Just because everyone knows you do it, it doesn't matter.
Right.
They could be playing 4 on the other site for some reason in a setup. It's like, just, do what works. Mm-hmm. And then when teams finally start to adjust or shut it down or whatever, that's where the innovation comes in, that you swap stuff up. Role changes, like, GMD was always an entry fragger in CS, and he was very good at it, and he's good at making space and stuff. So that was more so moving him back to duelist on some maps. Mm-hmm. Sean's just insane. He can play. I could put him on Brimstone, and he would entry and probably still have success. But it's, everybody needs to be able to do everything well, or else your team is going to be limited in how you play and stuff like that. So having a diverse team like we have allows us to get away with a lot of stuff, because we have people that can do everything.
I love that. Someone that asks, thoughts on the rise of Yoru and bind only ?
This is hilarious, and I talked about this. I am one of the biggest Yoru fans there is.
Yes, bro. We can talk about this for 20 minutes.
Yes, I could go on and on. My team is probably sick of it at this point. We DM together, and I DM with the guys to make sure they're warmed up and stuff. And Mike always jokes, because somehow I always get Yoru in-game and DMs. And I'm like, yeah, I made a deal with Riot that, I'm such into Yoru advocate that when I DM, I always get the player model. I think he's very good. He's very niche. You have to have an entire plan around him and how to use him, and you can't use him like a duelist.
My guy.
I think he's better used as a lurk role, and I actually think Ascent is a better map for Yoru than Bind. Bind is obviously one of the top 2, though, because the TPs, the havoc you can cause, and I think it's really good. Mm-hmm. But we played Ascent with Yoru, and it was, hilarious at times, because it's like, you're just in their spawn and they have no idea you're hell, and, they were playing Tree Room. Mm-hmm. But I think the biggest thing he needs is a sound nerf, a slight sound nerf, and he's going to be like one of the best champs in the game. Also, if they gave him something like he could fake the teleport noise, that would really open up his viability. Where it's like, you right click or something and it fakes the TP noise, and if you actually activate it, it takes the TP, things like that. He could be really cool. But I think he needs to be used as a lurker, and you utilize his TP. You basically 4-1 or something, you have him lurk, and the second he gets trapped in the corner, he just hits his escape button, and all of a sudden he's running up cat with 3 of you. So there's some cool things you can do with Yoru. I'm a huge Yoru fan, but I think he needs a slight sound nerf or something on his TP and stuff to be super viable. But if they do that, I also think he might be really broken.
Yeah, he would be nuts. There was when Tens played him this past weekend. I wasn't able to watch the games. I was out, but I was tweeting like, Yoru stands unite. Like, you guys got to believe the good word of Yoru, because it's legit. I'm glad to hear that there is another well-respected coach Who subscribes
Not
to
as
this?
a dualist.
to-
Not as a dualist.
But you
cannot-
subscribe
he's
to the
not
same
better than any
notions.
dualist.
Fair.
He's not better than any duelist.
Fair. We can we can have like we should talk about this later. This question is from Odorous, and this is a good one.
That's my boy.
How do you make every team that you're on better?
Luck.
Easy as
Next
that.
question. I think it's how you approach the game. Like there's so many rounds you win that you should have never won, and you made bad plays to get into that rounds. And there's rounds you lose that you probably should have won, and you need to be able to identify the things that go into those. In terms of, oh yeah, we did this, like, we lost this round because it broke down on a post plant because you two stopped talking to each other, or like we didn't have a plan, or things like that. And it's looking beyond a win and a loss column, and just figuring out how to play your percentages better, how to do things better, and just respecting every team you play. It doesn't matter if it's Sentinels, doesn't matter if it's the round of 128. Like, I think we're going to lose all the time. And I think that helps in the fact that, like, I'll look at these teams and be ready for like a round of 128 effect if we can. So it's like, you just have to, treat everyone with respect. But the second you get in a server, you're going to beat that team. That needs to be your attitude always. Leading up to that, you can be like, they're the better team. I can admit they're a better team, but the second you're in their server, like, no, they're going to earn it every time against us. And we practice like that to where we grind rounds against teams where we'll lose 10-2 halves because we're grinding the same thing over and over. And I tell the guys, I'm like, I want to work on this. We're going to lose the scrim. Be ready. We're probably going to get pounded. They're going to laugh at us or whatever, but we're going to work on this to see if it works. And you need to do things like that, and just being a person to your players or your teammates or whatever, that people have bad games, people have emotions or whatever, and just help manage those emotions, even though I fucking suck at it myself. But I can talk to any of my guys and make them feel better no matter what happens. And it helps keep their mood high. They perform really well. And, it all adds up to helping the team be better.
Or you study robotics and programming and slowly replace your players with super intelligent AI.
I am not David Denise.
That's my GenG conspiracy, that they're just slowly becoming robots.
I wish our reaction times would be higher.
Oh man. Aguambe123 asks, I'd like to know what your thoughts are on data analytics in Valorant. In his eyes, or in your eyes, would they be a benefit to coaching?
Definitely can be. It takes a lot of the work out of it for us, depending on what it uses. There's certain sites right now that will show you heat maps or things like that that are really helpful. But it's hard to implement data analytics in something that can change so frequently. But I definitely think it has a place, and I've used it before. I've used it in Valorant as well, and it's definitely helped us.
This is from sorry, my man, I messed it up. Ayo, it's me cooled. Once coming to GenG, what was the biggest thing that needed work, and what was the thing the team was doing best that needed the least amount of work?
Oh man, honest answer. When I came to GenG, they were fucking terrible. They were experimenting with changing IGLs and doing some stuff, and when I came in, it was bad. Where I was like, I'm talking to Andrew, the GM and the coach at the time, and he's like, I swear to God, they're not this bad. Like, I like, because oh man, they were getting pounded. And went back and I was like, well, GMD used to call and you guys had success and things like that. I was like, let's go back to this and I want to see how you guys play. And they went back and they had really good fast set pieces and mid-round pieces and stuff, and it just worked, and it was much better at that point. And I was like, okay, we don't have time to go the other route. Let's just try to do this, and then we get better at it. And they have so many set plays in terms of T side that they were confident in, that they worked. And that was the best thing about coming in, is they had all these little plays because they had been a team for so long that they could do a lot of those things, and then now we're having to go back over it, obviously. But they had a lot of really good set pieces that they could call in mid rounds and things like that. But at the beginning, it was definitely we did not have enough call outs on maps. There we would call something like short, and it's like short is 50 meters long. Like there's a pocket in here. We need like close short, back short, like short. Like, how am I supposed to pre-aim something like, oh, he's back sight? Like on breeze, yeah, he's back sight. Like, okay, there's fucking, there's miles and miles of places they could play back sight. Like, let's come up with some better post by, or like just calls in general on map. And I think that and playing off of each other and understanding the game and things like that, how it had effect was like the biggest thing we worked on at the beginning.
All right. Well, we're coming to the end, so we saved the best question for last. FM Happy asks, the classic, Phantom or Vandal? Not the classic as in the gun, but the question, Phantom or Vandal?
I was gonna say classic Phantom. I think the Phantom's just too good not to use. It bails you out in a lot of situations where you wouldn't have got kills. There's times you dink people, but there's also times you completely accident people because the spray is so much easier. So I'm a very big Phantom proponent. I use the Vandal in game, but that's because I'm over 30, so I have the boomer effect that it makes me better with the gun. But definitely the Phantom.
Matt,
wrong answer. Look at the name of the show, man.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. That's a very good point. I haven't even thought about that. Matt, this has been so much fun. Listen, I want to give you an opportunity to share any shout outs that you may have, anyone you want to thank, any content that you want to plug or anything like that. Good sir, the floor is yours right now.
Obviously my dad and my friends and the Midwest CSGO guys for being there through tough times, good times, whatever. GenG, obviously they do so much for us, staff, everything. The team and just friends, all the XChaos guys that was such a huge part of my life the last year, and like people like you, the guys that do the content that helps us get our names out and lets the community know more about people. Like I appreciate what you guys do in terms of you guys or Plat Chat or helping cast or do things like that. It really means a lot to me and to players, and shout out to like everybody doing content right now.
Dope. You're the man. Thank you so much, dude. Folks, I hope you all enjoyed the show. If you have any feedback from this episode, or if there's anyone that you specifically want to see in the next episode, please make sure to drop it in the comments below. Additionally, if you did enjoy the content, we ask that you please consider supporting the channel by liking, commenting, subscribing, all of the other things that you can do to engage with the channel. It is genuinely super helpful. But that's going to do it for us, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll catch you next time. Have a good one.